Hello, welcome to another Inside the Birds special NFL Draft edition. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan, and the Eagles are done on day two. Not as busy as we thought it might be, maybe a little wheeling and dealing out of day three, but only one pick from the entire day two. That is Andrew Mukuba. They take him in the second round. And Adam, amazingly, the Eagles just stayed right there in the second round and picked with the 32nd pick in the second round, 64th overall. So they get the safety out of Texas, Andrew Mukuba. This is a guy we talked a lot about in the pre-draft process with Greg Cosell. We felt the Eagles would come out with a safety. We felt that early in the draft, whether it was Andrew Mukuba, Xavier Watts, this was the kind of guy, a hybrid guy, playmaking guy that the Eagles would come out with. And sure enough, they did. And now you enter Andrew Mukuba into the safety picture alongside Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown. And the doorway is there for him to claim a starting spot right away for this team.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I really believe it. We actually put this on our Patreon board where we look at the targets. It really came down to me to Watts and Makuba. Now, what I find interesting is, and you pointed this out to me, and I looked it up. Man, Makuba's RAS score is pretty low at 5.12. That's like very low. Yeah, that's not Eagle-like, but I think you were telling me that if you look at the RAS scores, other than Sidney Brown's, it was really high. They don't seem to put a super high priority on super great athletic testing, although Makuba's 40 was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, those of our listeners should be really clued into how this works because we spent a lot of time talking about the RAS score and what it means to the Eagles at certain positions. And we mentioned that a guy like Nick Amenwori from South Carolina, who is built like Cam Chancellor, 6'3", 200 or 6'4", 230, 40 pounds, something crazy like that, scored a perfect 10 on the combine. We had intel that that's not really what the Eagles look for, specifically with Coach Vic Fangio in their defense. They don't like these rocked up, yoked up safeties who can also play linebacker. Size was an issue in that, as we understood, with Amenwori, as opposed to what Vic has had in the past at this position. Guys like Dante Whitner, Eddie Jackson. We went back, CJ Gardner-Johnson. Guys who have normally succeeded under Vic at that safety spot have been closer to the 5'11", 6 foot, 200, 202-pound range. Now, Makuba is really small. He's 5'11", but he's 186 pounds. But I have to give Andrew Checo a lot of credit. He's been writing about Makuba a lot. He mocked Makuba to the Eagles in the second round twice because of the fit. And we've talked to Greg Cosell about him, he is not someone who plays like 186 pounds. He plays big, he plays tough, he plays with physicality. That just has to translate to the NFL level. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, like Emmanuel Forbes out of Ole Miss. Greg Cosell even said, hey, this guy is light, but he can tackle. Well, it didn't translate well for him, the cornerback out of Ole Miss for the Commanders. But Makuba is a safety, and he's been productive at Texas, and the Eagles believe that these skills will translate. And so we'll see. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense for how they run their defense to have a safety, Adam, who can also double as a nickel, because that's what Vic really looks for. Those guys who can play safety and nickel, not necessarily safety and linebacker like an Amenwori.
Yeah, he actually played nickel early in his career. He was a transfer, I think, for Clemson, was it?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, so he's played nickel, so that's big. You look at his movement, which is pretty good. The thing with him is, at some point, he's just going to have to put some mass on his frame. He doesn't need 15 pounds, but
right.
You never know exactly. Is it 7, 10 pounds, whatever it is? He needs to get a little bit stronger. That's the knock on him. That's why he went late in the second round. But he went in what's called a starter's round. A second round is absolutely a starter. Like that, you're expected to start, by the way. By the end of your rookie contract, you better starter. That's probably going to be a miss.
Yeah.
Third round's the end of the starting round. So this is a guy that they obviously thought very, very high of. He actually moved the tape, from what we're told, is he moves better than Watts. Watts just has the elite ability to process and find the football. But it's not like Makuba's bad at it. He's actually good at it. He's better than average at it. And again, he has the versatility to play nickel. Eagles are pretty good nickel anyway with Cooper DeJean. So this is the pick we thought was going to happen. This is where we thought the safety would come. The first round pick was not what we were expecting. Let's be honest about it. Getting a hybrid inside backer edge rusher is fascinating. Really the only one that you would take in the first round. Campbell, who's a phenomenally talented football player. And we'll talk more about him going forward. But this is and I thought Howie said it well. That he also said it with Campbell. It wasn't a need pick, but let's face it, it's a need pick. Well, it's a value-added position of need going forward for the future. But both were more Makuba because Campbell is more of a sort of hybrid player, and we have to see exactly where they line him up.
Right. Makuba has a really interesting background. You mentioned that he started off at Clemson. He was the ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year there, third team All ACC, played well. And then he was there for 2021, 2022. He played 12 games. That's where he also played safety and nickel. In his third year at Clemson, he led the team with 6 pass breakups, started 10 games, did have an injury, but that early in that year, I guess it was not a big deal because, he played 10 games. Then he transfers to Texas, ties for 4th in all of the FBS with 5 interceptions, played 15 games, 69 tackles, 4 for a loss, 7 pass breakups, a forced fumble. By the way, kid was born in Zimbabwe and immigrated to America at 9. So a productive player on a defense that was very good. I felt like early in the process you heard all over the map, but as we started to talk to more people, it became clear this guy was going to be somewhere in the second, like early third round worst, but most likely in the second round. The fact that the Eagles could sit there at 64 and after Ahmed Wari went off the board and not have to give up anything or move up, though, showed some pretty good patience on their part.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there were other safeties they liked if they didn't get him. So that may have played into what you were talking about, how he's showing some patience because he knew there were other guys they could get. But look, last year with Quinyon Mitchell, he did move up. He was their number 1 graded corner, and they did move up to get him, which is, again, obviously intel that they have is something that is very important. And how we actually talked about that with Campbell and the medical testing, and they submit medical grades to the combine, and he had a general idea of where other teams stood with him, and he thought Campbell might fall, and he was right about that. So they've done this right. They've got a starting safety. Blankenship's terrific. He's a guy that was not drafted, and it's a guy that they probably were not expecting to sign as an undrafted free agent, but they did. Who knew he'd be a quality starting safety? So over a series of years, they've reshaped the safety position.
Absolutely. Now it'll be interesting to see what this pick does for Sidney Brown, Adam. Does it light a fire under him? Does it get him to play a little bit more within himself and not so hair on fire? You like the explosion, you like the speed, the quickness. You don't like some of the little bit of the recklessness and the undisciplined style that he played in, some of the after the whistle stuff. Definitely a very good special teams player, though. So he certainly will have a role on this team if he can't crack the safety rotation at all. Definitely special teams. But, I'm sure Sidney Brown's thinking, I really want to be a starter for this team. What do I got to do to be able to get into this top 2 or to be able to beat out these guys for a job?
By the way, well, here's the thing, though. Makuba's got better versatility.
Yeah,
he could cover a slot receiver, which is extremely important in today's NFL with all the 11 personnel that clubs play. Right. If you don't have that versatility, and Sidney Brown has some, but Makuba is better in coverage. Mm-hmm. That's the word in the scouting community. So competition brings the best out of people. We'll see how it shakes out, but you don't draft a safety the second round not to be a starter. That's just the bottom line. That's where they're at with this position. Blankenship's going nowhere. He's clearly entrenched as a starter. As Greg Cosell's told us, they think that he's a tone setter for their defense. So the cool thing is now with those 3 guys in there, you've got a group of young players who they clearly believe in, and they're going to have some competition here. Training camp could be very interesting at the safety position. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's talk now about the round 3. It was very interesting for the Eagles. They had a lot of ammunition to move up if they wanted to. They did not. They wound up trading back, and now they have 6 picks today on day 3. They've got a couple picks, I believe, you said you had it in front of you, right? A couple picks in the 4th round, 2 in the 4th, 2 in the 5th, 3 in the 5th, and 1 in the 6th. So that gives them 6 overall.
So they've got 111 and 130 in the 4th. And then this is just kind of funny. In the fifth, 161, 165, and 168. Wow, three within 7 picks of each other. And around the draft off, unless they trade out or get more picks, round 6, 191. So, yeah. And by the way, one thing I do want to add, they do have Lewis Seen. Do want to talk about? We've talked about. We've probably talked about him 30 times since they signed him off Buffalo's practice squad. Look, he's a guy who's out there. We'll see. He's totally healthy as we understand it. We reported this months ago that the Bills in practice actually worked him out. They started practicing him at linebacker. Although the Eagles see him as a safety, but I'm interested to see what Lewis Seen could do here. So that's another guy who's in the mix at safety.
Absolutely. All right. So in the third round, they don't make a pick. They trade out. As I understand it, the Eagles had some eyes on some offensive linemen in that round, but they went off the board pretty early. I didn't get any names, but you know who they brought in, who they were interested in. For example, the Georgia guy, Tate Ratledge, I believe, right? He went pretty early there. Or no, Dylan Fairchild. I'm sorry, that's the one. He went in the third round, 81st overall. Charles Grant, an offensive tackle out of William and Mary. We knew this showed some interest in, went 99th. There were a couple other, Wyatt Millam from West Virginia, who played tackle, but definitely projected as a guard in the NFL, but had that tackle experience. We talked about the Eagles really liking guys who can play both guard and tackle if they need to. He went off the board. So the Eagles were out of there in the third round and don't make a pick. So after 3 rounds, with all the ammunition they have between this year's draft, Adam, and next year's draft, a little surprising to me that they only wind up taking 2 players.
Yeah, and they if we look at their needs board or our needs board for them, they're all on defense. They still need another defensive tackle. We understand they could just sign a veteran to compete against a Jomo or back them up. Mm-hmm. Corner, look, they could get away with what they have, but they're very light because we know it's Jackson versus Ringo for the left cornerback job, but Eli Ricks is still there. They just wouldn't play Ricks last year. He was relegated to special teams if he ever played. Yep. So, yeah, they're short at corner. That's another thing they could add later on. I mean, they could just literally not draft those positions and sign veterans for depth and competition, but you'd rather get younger. But the thing is, though, at an inside backer, because they play 2 of them, I'm just fascinated to see how they're going to see Campbell. We talked about this, and if you haven't seen it or listened to it, our show with Greg Cosell right after the pick, and we broke down exactly what the tape looks like, where he fits in best, what he can do. And the thing is, it's like, where are you going to put him in? What rooms you're going to put him in, right? With what coaches? Campbell talked about how he talked to Coach Washburn, who's the edge rusher coach, mm-hmm. and we're sure he'll be cross-trained with Bobby King. But what's the percentage going to be? Well, they're not going to know that until they get him on the field. He's not going to get clear for contact for a while. But right. At some point, they're going to have to figure out where exactly he's going to line up, probably from a percentage standpoint. But he can do both.
Yeah. So listen, we've been hitting the phones. I spoke to a couple of teams since the first round pick was made. I spoke to 3 teams. All 3 gushed about the kid, the actual football player that Campbell is. Usually you get, really like this kid. This is our concern. Or they all gushed about him. Everybody thinks the Eagles got a really good football player. Where does he fit? Now that depends on who you speak to. I spoke to one team that viewed him as a player you could play in both, but they viewed him as an inside linebacker. I had another team and these teams I spoke to are teams that actually value linebackers a little bit more than the Eagles. So I take their insight really, for what it's worth, which is a lot. This other team I spoke to said they also viewed him as a hybrid player that they would have used as a stack linebacker and as a pass rusher. So I think that's really interesting. One team said just stack linebacker. The other said, no, we would use him in both. The third team I spoke to also really liked him. Now, here's interesting. This might little nugget I got that may explain a little bit of the drop. This other team I spoke to, I asked if there were any other injuries other than the shoulder to be concerned about that would take him down there. And they said that they were a little concerned about the knees. I didn't, I don't have the medical testing in front of me. I don't know what it is, but that was their concern. So, now you have shoulder and knee concerns for Jihaad Campbell, which may explain why, a guy like that was available that low in the first round.
Yeah, the big one with the shoulder, it's labor him, you come back. It's as I put this out there on SportsScore that Loveland would not drop because of the the labrum surgery. That was not a concern at all for clubs. And boy, although he went earlier, and I thought, wow, to the Bears. That I didn't see that coming. That was really interesting. What Ben Johnson wanted is Colston Loveland. But getting back to Campbell and the labrum, the one issue though, and I pointed this out, that a former GM told me that the problem with an inside backer position is the amount of traffic that you have to sort through with your arms and your elbows and your shoulders. And there's a lot of contact they take on. And he said it's a top 5 injury rate. I don't know where he didn't really define how many years that is. He just said that's maybe it was one of the teams he was with over his career, that how they graded it is that's a high traffic position and it takes on a lot of contact, and it's a top 5 injury rate. So that is a concern. Yeah, the knee, by the way, we'd heard that it was a small concern. It was not going to probably send him down a draft board, but you add up whatever injury concerns you had, and he's had one major surgery that we know of, which is shoulder. It's still labrum surgery. That's a shoulder surgery. But bottom line is that he went late first. They played it correct. They got him where they thought they would. Now, I would say this, though, that they tried to trade up repeatedly. I know it's out there, and we've heard separately about the Chargers, that they thought they had a deal worked out with the Chargers, or like 22. Now, who knows? They may have tried to trade up even before 22. Right. We don't have access to that. But the bottom line is that they got a player who will cover one of their positions of need, clearly, which is inside backer. They're really light there because of the Dean injury. And they can't say specifically when he'd be back, though. But didn't you say on our last show that you had heard October, maybe something like that?
October is where I'm hearing for Nakobe. Yeah.
Okay. And then edge. Like, see, this is interesting. They definitely need another edge rusher. Are they considering him? Well, I'm sure he'll line up at edge at some point. If not, if it's not his primary position, that he can do that. Does that eliminate them from looking for an edge in the draft? We'll have to see. That's an interesting look there, because he could play 2 positions, and both happen to be positions of need.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I feel like there's already, the pick was made Thursday night. I feel like there's already a lot of either misinformation or misleading information about there. There's reports that he's not really an inside linebacker, or it's irrelevant that he plays inside linebacker. They're getting an edge rusher. As we understand it, they are going to give him opportunities at stacked inside linebacker. You just mentioned it. Nakobe Dean's coming off an injury. So right now it's Zach Bond and Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who hasn't really played a whole lot. And this kid, Jihaad Campbell, is 10 times the athletic tester that Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is. That doesn't mean he's going to be better than Trotter. I'm just saying he's going to get opportunities in both fronts, both as a stack linebacker and an on-ball linebacker. To say that he's only one, as far as we understand, is not accurate. And to say like one of the things is irrelevant, it's just that he's a pass rusher, is not accurate. If he's a really good inside linebacker, Vic's going to figure out a way to use him like Andrew Van Ginkel in both ways, inside linebacker and edge rusher. So to me, they go hand in hand, and it's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. If he's very good at both, I wouldn't dismiss one or the other. I would say these are 2 areas where he could help the team.
Yeah, a couple things with and let's not forget, Ben Van Sumert is now a fullback, at least for now, right?
Right.
So they're super light at inside backer. Dallas Gant's a long shot to make the team. In fact, he's got to make the training camp. So you're really looking at right now Bond, who's a stud, at least off 1 year he is, a creation of an inside linebacker by Vic. And what's funny about Van Ginkel is he was created by Vic out of necessity as a hybrid player, because the Dolphins were down. They were down at inside backer. They were pretty light there, and then it wound up being that they had injuries at outside at edge rusher. Excuse me, not outside linebacker. Vic doesn't call them outside linebackers; he calls them edge rushers.
That's right.
In their odd man front. So it's kind of funny how things work out. And now you look at it going forward here. They've got some work to do, but the cool thing is it's not like they have to. Oh my gosh, if they don't get this one, they can't line up. They can line up at every position right now. But if somebody gets hurt, they're in Bleeps Creek. I mean, they got problems. So they've got some work to do with these remaining picks.
Yeah, 100%. Last thing we wanted to talk about, because we spent a whole lot of time. You made a point in the podcast that we did that previewed the NFL draft, not the mock draft one, the one where we went through all the positions for the Eagles. And you said, hey, if they want Dallas Goedert's replacement, they're going to have to get him early.
Yeah.
And you were absolutely right about that, and the Eagles did not go get their guy early. And after they took Campbell 31st overall, they sat there in the second round and took their safety that we just talked about, Makuba. But all those tight ends that would have made sense and been good fits, they went very quickly early in the second round. Mason Taylor to the Jets with the 10th pick in the second round. Terrence Ferguson, Oregon, 4 picks later. And then 4 picks after him was Elijah Arroyo from Miami. And once those 3 got off the board, it just felt like the Eagles weren't going to find their guy. And, they may take a tight end day 3, but I don't think that guy, he'll compete with Harrison Bryant. He'll compete with the kid
Granson.
Yeah. Kylan Granson.
Yeah.
But as far as like a sure shot stud, they didn't jump on that opportunity.
No, in fact, Fannin went to the Browns, who I got to tell you, the more I talk to personnel people, area scouts, one scouting director, I mean, they like the person. They think he's fine, but it's a football player. First of all, he's too small in terms of his body frame. He doesn't run all that well. Not explosive. Not a great blocker. He's more of an F tight end. You can't really play him in line. This would not been a fit for the Eagles. I know his former college coach is the Eagles quarterbacks coach, Scott Loeffler, but that would leave them still with a starter. Now, it's funny is the Browns took him in a low-end starter round in the 3rd round. David Njoku is terrific. When he's healthy, he does everything.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens there. But when you look at it, right, if Goddard's back, it's a great thing. He's back in that he's under contract. If they don't move him, they're absolutely loaded with Goddard, Calcaterra, Harrison Bryant, and Granson, as you mentioned. Cameron Latu was another draftee by the 49ers. E.J. Jenkins is developmental with Nick Muse, who, by the way, they give Nick Muse a little bit of guaranteed money, which is kind of funny for guys a long shot to make it. So, but they thought a lot of him. So they'd be loaded. The tight end room would be absolutely loaded if Goddard is here after the 7th round.
Yeah. And from what I understand, the Eagles obviously loved the 2 guys that went in the 1st round. They knew they weren't going to get them. They liked Mason Taylor a lot. We talked about that, but there was a drop off for them after Mason Taylor. Even the Arroyos and the who's the other guy that went?
Ferguson.
Probably not as they didn't view them the same way they viewed Taylor and the other guys. So that explains why they really didn't jump up and go after him. But like you said, the tight end room is going to look pretty interesting come August when they get ready to compete there. All right.
Well, again, we're going to find out, but just real quick, we're going to find out by the end of the day. Oh yeah, and by the end of the day, we will have another show, which I look forward to. I always like taking the overview of once they're done, system fits and where you put them in competition, because they're going to have, and we'll see how many picks Howie has. And by the way, they may trade for a veteran because they've got these picks. They've got a ton of picks next year, even excluding the compensatory picks. They're expecting to get 4. They're definitely a lot to get 3, and they should get 4. You can't trade picks. By the way, you cannot trade the compensatory picks that have not been awarded yet. They know they're going to get them, but they can't trade them. But they could trade around them. They could trade the picks that they do own. So there still could be some wheeling and dealing by Howie here by the end of the day.
I would bet the house on that. That's what he likes to do.
Yeah, should be. Yeah,
definitely will on day 3. All right, good stuff there. That'll wrap it up for what the Eagles did on day 2. And as Adam just said, we'll have one final draft recap later to go through all of the day 3 picks. Hopefully we can get Andrew DeCecco in here with us as well, because that's his wheelhouse, and we'll go at it. All right, so for Adam Caplan and Geoff Mosher, well, I'm Geoff Mosher, and you've been watching Inside the Birds NFL Draft Day 2 special. We'll catch you on the next one.